I went to my sister's gender reveal. She pressed the ultrasound into my hands, glowing. Isn't she beautiful? She asked. I'm a radiologist. One look and my blood ran cold. He pulled her husband aside. We need to talk. Now. That was not a baby. The backyard was dipped in pink so thoroughly it felt like walking into a lung, everything soft and breathing and excessive. The balloons nuzzled the maple leaves with a static whisper, the cupcakes wore their frosting like wigs melting in the sun, and the banner declared it's a girl with the certainty of a weather report written by the hopeful. My mother had tied satin bows around mason jars as if hydration needed dressing up. The playlist tried too hard and succeeded anyway, a pop song with a laugh track for a heartbeat. Danny found me before I found the punch, eyes glossy with plans, a glow that had nothing to do with heat. She slid a glossy ultrasound into my palm as if she were handing me proof of a secret ocean. Isn't she beautiful? She asked, the syllables fragile as blown sugar. I am a radiologist. My brain, traitor and training, narrowed the world to grayscale and grain. I saw brightness where soft shadows should curl, a blizzard static where a curve might nestle. The air thin, no sirens, just a silent unspooling. Laughter clanged against my ribs. Somewhere, an ant debated sprinkles, somewhere, a cousin chased confetti with a toddler's solemn focus. The print stuck to my sweat-slick fingers. I tried to force my voice into the shape of sister, not scientist. The maple lifted its leaves like a blessing. The grill hissed, the ice in a cooler cracked, a bubble of helium grazed my cheek and made a squeak like a trapped mouse. Time did its old trick of stretching and snapping. He smiled, the kind you wear like a uniform. Say something, I said, and let the sentence end in a hope I couldn't name. I swallowed, found the ground, and began to make a plan I didn't want. In the rooms where I work, everything is dark enough for the body to speak, and Ebe learned to listen with my eyes, the quiet arch of a skull, the seahorse curl of a spine, the bright comma of a yolk sac, the rhythmic whisper a heart makes when it finds electricity. At 9 weeks, even the shy ones leave crumbs, measurements obediently settle on the edges of the frame, a crown rump length claims its line, the world arranges itself around a tiny insistence. In Danny's print there was no whisper, only the loud relief of too much light, a field of bright dots crowding the screen, as if someone had shaken a snow globe and held it still mid-storm. We retaught to name that pattern before it names us. Molar. A word like a stone. He pressed my thumb to the corner where a boutique font declared tiny wonders in pink curly letters, about printed where a depth marker should be. Que Psaki, not diagnostic. A place for celebration, not for decisions. The image didn't belong to medicine and yet it bled into it. I catalogued what wasn't there, no measurable embryo, no clear sac edges, glitter where there should be grain. Where did you have this done? He asked as gently as a fingertip on glass. Tiny wonders, she said, proud and bashful as a kid show and telling a found feather. My heart did that single heavy thud, a door knocked once from the other side. He wanted to turn my training off like a lamp. He wanted ordinary ignorance, the mercy of it. But the picture sang its awful cheerful song, and only I knew the lyrics. He smiled until my face ached and looked for Ben, the one person I could break with. I found Ben doing battle with a flare of grease at the grill, his face shiny with heat and effort and a kind of preemptive pride I recognized from the waiting rooms, men bracing their bodies ahead of news. I borrowed a paper plate as a prop and his attention with a joke, and then I asked if I could steal him, pitching my voice toward casual like a coin thrown onto a surface I hoped was solid. Beyond the garage the air calmed, the world narrowed to the purr of a lawnmower 2 houses over and the soft chitter of a squirrel unimpressed by our human drama. He held the print like a fragile thing that might bruise if pressed wrong. I don't want to alarm you, I started, a phrase that alarms by existing. This doesn't look right. He could be wrong, I want to be wrong. But we need a proper scan. Today. He watched the color withdraw from his face and then return in a different shape, the way soldiers in movies put on helmets even if there is nowhere to hide. Do we tell her? He asked in a voice that had already lowered itself as if we were in church. Not yet, I said, tasting the risk of it. We don't guess where we need proof. We get her seen, we keep it small, we get help. He nodded once, grateful for any rope tossed into this water. It smelled like charcoal and fear. We stood there a beat longer than we needed to, 2 people holding a thin plan together with politeness, and then walked back toward the party, our smiles wiped clean and redrawn. From the yard someone started a countdown like we were launching a satellite instead of a sentence. 10. The cannons by the porch looked suddenly like ordnance, pink paper shells with fuse lines and warnings printed in fonts that promised fun. 9. I met Ben's eyes, felt the shared current. 8. We'll say you're not feeling well, I murmured, a script we could learn in seconds. 7. I ate something weird, he volunteered, already rubbing his stomach with the ghost of a wince. Seeks. Laughter floated up, light as the helium balloons jostling the maple leaves. 5. Danny's smile found us, puzzled and soft. 4. Sit, she said, moving toward him, all care and no suspicion. 3. We should just, hospital, breathe, not as a command but as a path. 2. He nodded, taking the blame that wasn't blame at all. 1. We threaded through the bodies and the bows and the sugar, apologizing with our shoulders, practicing a harmless kind of deceit. The gate latch clicked behind us like a final yes. At the exact moment the world tried to celebrate without us, a single premature bolt from a cannon misfired on the porch, sending a blush of pink drifting up like a mistake realizing itself too late. The color fell on no one, a small mercy. We slid into Bain's car with a familiarity that felt rehearsed by a laugh we hadn't wanted, and I texted a colleague 3 words that would return our party to gravity: "We're coming in." Hospitals have a way of gentling noise into hum, air handlers swallowing panic, souls whispering on waxed floors, voices softened as if volume itself could bruise. We checked in with a flurry of names and birthdays and a small surrender of insurance cards. The sonography room held the particular kindness of dim light, the machines glow like a moon you could approach. The gel made its small winter on Danny's belly, and she made a face that made us all smile because normal is greedy and will take any inch you offer. The screen bloomed into the country I know best, grayscale fields where lives begin as topography. The same pattern announced itself, cheerful brightness crowding the frame, pulley clusters like coral lost far from sea. The sonographer's competence folded itself into quiet. She measured what could be measured, marked what could not, and then her face did that tiny shift professionals learn, a ripple of compassion that they dare to spill. "I'm going to get the physician," she said, and her voice tucked the words into a blanket. Demit pried itself open while we waited. Bain's hand found Danny's, Danny found mine with the other, making a small human chain I wanted to weld. He counted breaths the way I instruct strangers, 5 in like stepping stones, 5 out like letting go of a pebble you don't need to carry. I noticed everything to keep from noticing anything, a tiny runaway thread on the curtain hem, a faint scuff on the baseboard, the way the gel rounded into a bead when the tech wiped it away. He held the door with my eyes and waited for the person who would name what we already knew. It rolled in with practiced quiet, Dr. Nguyen, his chair not an intrusion but a decision about where to keep his body. He says met each of ours like shaking hands. He didn't touch the keyboard. It didn't fuss with the knobs that people trust too much. It sat where we could see him and the screen at once, a translator with both scripts in view. "I'm so sorry," he said, and the syntax of the day snapped into place. "This isn't a developing pregnancy. What we're seeing is called a molar pregnancy. It's rare. It's not your fault. We know what to do." He spoke the words the way good doctors do, as if laying stones across a river we could cross one by one. He explained the difference between complete and partial, how sometimes tissue tries to become a garden with no seeds, how the body can be too enthusiastic a host. He said there would be a procedure, and it could happen soon, that we'd follow numbers down like a countdown we could trust for once. He said the word cancer and then the words low risk and watchful, and wrapped them carefully so we wouldn't catch on the wrong edge. Danny stared at the ceiling tiles as if they were a map and she was learning north again. "So there was nothing," she asked, the question a pebble that could have become a boulder if mishandled. "There was something," he said. "It just didn't grow the way it should. Your body did not fail you." Ben held the glossy print in fists he'd forgotten to open. We were 4 people in a quiet room, choosing the truth and each other. The machine continued to hum like an animal that didn't know the news. We left with a plan folded into papers, a date circled, a list of instructions written in kind verbs: rest, call, check. The hospital door slid open and let us out like a tide. Dusk had set its teeth into the edges of the neighborhood by the time we snuck back through the side gate we had fled. The party was mostly ghosts, plastic cups sweating under a new layer of dew, napkins that had given up trying to stay neat, a ribbon snagged on a hydrangea like the yard had put on a sash and then forgotten why. Pink confetti lay scattered in the grass, stubborn as clover, a celebration with no owner. We moved through the house like we'd been told to be quiet in it. Someone had thought to cover the cupcakes with plastic wrap. The frosting kissed the film like a longing for another life. Danny leaned into me and the hug turned into a lean and the lean turned into a stand, and then she asked into my shoulder, "Did you know?" The words didn't accuse, they begged for a timeline that wouldn't betray her. I suspected, I said to the fabric of her shirt, to the ache under it. I needed us to be sure. She nodded so small it felt like a tremor. Bain boxed the unused cannons gently, as if they might wake. We magnet the ultrasound to the fridge anyway, just for the night, a courtesy to the version of the day who didn't yet know how heavy paper could be. Die naia isn't the first night, it's a quilt you pull up so you can sleep. A week later, we walked into Tiny Wonders as if approaching a friend with spinach in her teeth, not for shame, not for spectacle, just because kindness sometimes is a correction. The shop was a cloud of enthusiasm, pastel chairs, shelves of frames that promised love before it had a face, a chalkboard sign declaring miracles by the hour. The owner had the eyes of someone not yet warned by the world, and I tried not to be the messenger that broke something shiny. We wanted to tell you how it turned out, I said, dressing the words in gentleness. So you can be careful with what you say next time. Her smile faltered and then held, brave on a cliff. We never diagnose, she said, palms up. We just celebrate. The bow and the logo on her shirt sat exactly where a stethoscope would have rested, and the irony was not her fault. Sometimes celebration looks like medicine by accident, I said. Sometimes people bring you things that need a doctor's words. It's not your job to give them. It might be your job not to. She swallowed. We tell them to follow up, she offered, small and honest. Keep doing that, I said, and let the conversation land there, not hunting a takedown, not pinning blame to a bulletin board. Danny didn't need a crusade, she needed fewer ambushes. We stepped back into the ordinary light of the sidewalk. The ribbon around the bag they'd given her last week wrote our own steps like a question, so she pulled it off and tucked it into a public bin, a tiny ritual for closing a door. Healing set its own tempo, patient and dull as a metronome. We learned the new ritual: show up, roll up a sleeve, offer a vein. Numbers replaced dreams and then, slowly, began to release them. Each week the lab posted a single-digit sequence that felt like stepping down a staircase in the dark, trusting your ankle, your faith, the next riser. We texted more hearts than words because the language had gone thin with overuse. Sometimes an emoji is the only thing not trying too hard. On good days, Danny forgot the calendar the way a song leaves your head. Later, she'd remember and feel like a thief, as if joy needed permission. On bad days the universe felt conspiratorial, baby shoes at the checkout like teeth, hey Strankher's belly presented like a punchline. She learned the choreography of sudden sadness: you turn your back, you look at onions, you call it allergies. Ben learned a new verb, to sit with. E didn't fix. E didn't advice had a wound that hadn't asked. E held the remote in her hand and the world stopped being a problem to engineer. I learned silence without absence, the art of being near and saying almost nothing. Work was a refuge until it wasn't. The snowstorm pattern on an unrelated screen could gut me between appointments. We all became experts in gentle, how to greet the dog, the mail, the mirror, while the numbers retreated like a tide that finally remembered the moon. Grief is an opportunist, it finds the hairline cracks and worries them wider. Next time, people said with the optimism of weather apps, and Danny bristled like a cat at a thunderclap. Ope in the future felt like a trespass on the present. Ben apologized to the air, to the sink, to the dog, for things he did not break, as if sorrow were a message they left out. I apologized for breathing in two dialects, sister and doctor, and for how my training kept walking ahead of my heart. At 2 a.m, Danny texted, "Do you think I made it up?" The question was already crying, so I called. We were two silhouettes in separate rooms connected by a wire and a fear. You didn't, I said, because belief is a real thing even when it doesn't become a person. You believed in something beautiful. That's not a mistake, that's a muscle. We counted the appliances that hummed in the night and pretended the noise was ocean. We named the things that were still ours: coffee, sand, the neighbor's ridiculous lawn flamingos, a joke that still landed, the soft animals of blankets and the kind persistence of morning. Sometimes not drowning is winning, I offered, and she huffed a laugh that unclenched something in both of us. The call ended with no resolution, which is to say it ended honestly. We slept like swimmers, one ear for storms, one ear for our own breath coming back. We kept records the way travelers keep tickets, not as proof to a judge but as breadcrumbs back to ourselves. A folder grew fat with letters whose tone learned us: we saw you, we're sorry, it is what comes next, and the dates lined up like a spine. Post-its dotted the fridge in a domestic constellation: blood draw, call Dr. N, pick up broth. Danny wrote in a notebook she didn't share, a private place where grief could sprawl without knocking things off shelves. Then learned the nurses' names and then their kids' soccer teams because caring is sometimes remembering the small map of someone else. He named the fears out loud like pests you refuse to let nest: what if, when, why me, so they skitter away under the light. We didn't post. Not because of shame, but because some stories bruise when handled by strangers. The world is greedy for narrative. We decided to let ours cool on the counter, the way you do with bread that will collapse if sliced too soon. In the quiet we found new rituals, walks at dusk, the same 2 blocks that changed in tiny ways, an egg borscht rose had fattening, a chalk hopscotch fading then returning after rain. We built an ordinary that could bear weight. We let the phone ring sometimes. We let it not. When the numbers finally stepped off the staircase and into 0, and then stayed like a guest with good manners, we marked it with the smallest parade. No cannons, no bows. We ordered Chinese with childish glee, argued navels about whether lo mein is better than rice, read each other fortunes out loud with solemn voices and laughed at how nearly all of them predicted traffic and patience. We toasted water. We took a photo of our feet on the coffee table, 3 pairs, socks unmatched, because the view from a couch can be a summit. The box of cannons ascended to the high shelf of the hall closet, where uneasy objects go to nap. For a nerve war someday, Ben offered, the sentence testing its knees. Or for never, Danny countered, and neither word felt like defeat. We put on a quiet movie where nothing exploded and still felt moved. He went home with leftovers and the lightness of a backpack. Jube finally sat down, and for the first time in months slept without waking to count anything. The next morning was unremarkable in the holy way unremarkable can be, cereal, sun on the sink, the dog making his case for a walk with eyebrows alone. We didn't celebrate an ending so much as we honored a steadying, a return to a baseline we now understood was a gift. A year later, the sonography room hadn't changed its kindness. The gel was still a small winter, the machine notched its way up from idle to alert with the same polite hum. Danny reached for my hand this time before anyone said a thing, a ritual we didn't bother hiding from the tech. Nursing superstition says you don't watch the screen too early, but superstition had taught us nothing we could use, so we looked. And there it was, a grain of rice that pulsed, a lighthouse winking at a fog we'd spent months learning to live in. The little flicker laughed at physics, it was bigger than itself. No snowstorm, no coral, just a small stubborn dot that said choose me to every cell in the room. The thick smile was the kind they teach you to ration, she let it bloom then tucked it away like a blessed secret. Dr. Nguyen came in and calibrated nothing, he calibrated us. Cautious optimism, he prescribed, like a vitamin adjusted to the right dose. We said yes like people who have learned the cost of no. The tears were not dramatic, only truthful, they slid down and didn't they need to be wiped right away. The 3 of us breathed in sync by accident. The screen printed out a strip of proof that I slid carefully into my bag as if paper could have a pulse. For the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like an enemy camp, it felt like a road we could see for at least a mile. We told the family with coffee and donuts, the table sticky with sugar and relief. We're expecting, Danny said in a voice they use in a forest so you wouldn't frighten a deer. The room exhaled and then clapped the way people do at the end of a lullaby, soft, believing, careful not to wake the neighbors. Aunties brought sweaters instead of advice. My mother touched Danny's hair with a reverence that made me step into the hall and collect myself. Later, at home, Ben pulled a chair to the hall closet like a man retrieving photo albums. He brought down the box of pink contraptions that had outlived their first script. When, Danny said, eyes bright and cautious, like testing a porch step after ice. The sky outside had the honest blue of a true Thursday with no tricks. We took the smallest cannon to the yard as if we might startle fate. The Pope was anticlimactic and perfect, a soft confession. A cloud of color rose and then chose us, landing mainly in Danny's hair, dusting Ben's shoulders, tracing my shirt in a laughable blush. Neighbors barely looked up. The dog chased a fragment like it could be reason enough. It felt like forgiveness, or perhaps a promise we could keep this time, Joey, on purpose, with both eyes open. We swept nothing. We let the paper stay where it fell until the breeze made decisions for us. I think about the moment my sister pressed hope into my hand disguised as a picture, and how many versions of us could have cracked wide there, how easy it would have been to shout a diagnosis into a party, to choose public truth over private safety, to make our grief perform acrobatics for the unsuspecting. We didn't. We stepped sideways. We let the world keep its pink while we went to find a room that could hold what was actually happening. We protected her dignity first and then the story, in that order, even though narrative is a hungry animal and loves to be fed first. We learned to leave space for reality to arrive and take the seat it needed, even when the table was set for something prettier. That day was not the death of hope, it was the beginning of a different kind of trust, the kind that looks like hand-holding and breath-counting and choosing silence until the right words put their shoes on. He kept the first print anyway, folded and tucked not as a trophy but as a witness. When my niece arrived, full of the square breathy cries that make nurses grin, I held her, and the old fear, my alert animal, lay down and quieted. She was beautiful, and not because we demanded it or staged it, but because truth had been given time to do its slow work without spectacle. We had chosen each other over confetti, and look, here she was, confetti we could kiss. Sometimes, the real victory is not letting yourself lose, even if the other person wins with a laugh. If you've ever felt something like this, please let me know in the comments. I read every comment. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like. Don't forget to share it with someone close to you, they might need to hear it too. And if you want to hear more such real stories, subscribe to the channel. See you in the next story.